Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
It's my pleasure.
One of the main reasons we want to talk to you is because you speak very frankly about the crisis and what went on and where we are today.
Sometimes.
Well, most of the time, I would say. But let me ask, first of all, because I want to start with a bit of history, if you want. When did you decide that Greece was in real trouble?
We didn't decide that Greece was in trouble. Greece was in trouble, and we had to assess that situation. And the assessment we made, I'm referring to the Eurogroup as a group, is back in 2008, 2009.
There have been some stories lately that you visited Greece secretly in 2009, and you told the government then that things were very bad and they had to take some measures. Is that a true story? Or?
I don't remember if I have been in Greece in 2009. I should, but I don't. But I was drawing the attention of the then Greek government to the seriousness of the problem. I never hid it to my Greek colleagues at that time that problems were starting to become very serious.
And do you think if the Karamanlis government had taken some measures, fiscal measures back then, the crisis could have been averted, or it was too late?
I don't think that the crisis could have been avoided. One has to separate the crisis explanations. The crisis, the one we are facing till now, did not start in Greece. The crisis started in the US, subprime crisis. The Lehman Brothers breakdown. These events were far away from Greece, but as Greece appeared to the markets, to general observers as being the weakest part of the euro area, all the focus, mainly of speculators too, was put on Greece.
I remember you saying the famous phrase that the game is over. Do you think Papandreou got it, or was he sort of ignorant of what the real severity of the situation?
I'm not in charge of criticizing this government. There is no reason for criticizing this government, no previous governments. I had, that's at least one can say, friendly relations with all the Greek prime ministers, with some of the finance ministers, and I don't think that earlier measures could have as an effect that the crisis, the Greek part of the crisis, could have been avoided. But of course, it would have been helpful if earlier measures would have been taken, but don't consider that the crisis could have been avoided by having a Greek government taking some modest or even huge measures. The general problem was far more serious than that.
Let me ask you, whose idea was to have the IMF involved in the Troika? Because there's a big discussion about that. Was this a German idea? Was this...
You know, I was very reluctant to have the IMF being involved in the solutions to be brought to what at that time did appear as being and as having all the ingredients of a European crisis, because I thought, and I was wrong, that this is a problem of the euro area and we have to solve the problem as a euro area. Germany, the Dutch, Finland were insisting on having the IMF on board because they thought, they were not entirely wrong, that the IMF had the expertise in dealing with crises of that kind, whereas the European Commission, the Eurogroup itself, hadn't this expertise. And so I decided finally, although Jean-Claude Trichet was also not in favor of having the IMF being involved, I decided to have the IMF because that was the precondition for having other European countries, Germany, Dutch, Finland, to be part of the packages we composed.
Now, as you know, the IMF published a post-mortem report.
Yeah.
And they say in there that it would have been much better for Greece if there had been a restructuring of the debt up front. Did you discuss this back then?
I think we discussed that, but the problem at that period, we are now in 2010, aren't we, was that we didn't have instruments with which to fight the general crisis we were facing then. We didn't have the money. It had to be postponed, the answers and the responses to be given to Greece until the moment we would have had these instruments. Greece wouldn't be a member of the euro area at this very moment. So the only possibility to deal with the crisis was were these bilateral programs. I was asking myself during that period, what is the right thing to do? And I still do believe that we did the right thing.
You know, one of the big problems that was created by this report was that the IMF is saying that the fiscal program with Greece helped ring-fence Europe and the European banks from a Greek default, but it didn't benefit Greece itself.
Yeah. We had to ring-fence because the contagion risk was an enormous one. Had we accepted the realization of the contagion risk, we wouldn't sit here together, because then the whole of the euro area would have disappeared in one wave, in one movement, mainly driven by speculators bidding against the euro and bidding against the coherence and the cohesion of the euro area. I don't think that the IMF is right, although I like the fact that the IMF is increasingly autocritical. I don't criticize those who are starting to become autocritical. And parts of the autocritics the IMF is issuing against itself are elements of the debate we had with the IMF and with others during this crucial period. I never doubted that Greece would have the capacity, the talent, the energy to overcome this crisis. I never doubted that the Greek genius, which is historically proven, would be of such an extraordinary volume that this crisis could be fighted successfully by the Greek authorities and by the Greek people. But I have to say, although I never doubted about the final outcome, that very often, at least from time to time, I doubted about the rightness and the justification of the measures which were imposed on Greece or negotiated with Greece. I'm of the opinion that the wealthiest part of the Greek society was not really submitted to the same amount of contribution than the weakest part of the Greek society. It's the modest Greeks, the poor Greeks, which had to suffer most. Those who have the money didn't suffer in the same way than those who didn't have the money. And these were my doubts. These are still my doubts.
I mean, there's...
And the IMF is not really criticizing that. I'm criticizing that. The IMF was pushing for that. I'm criticizing that. Not only the IMF, others, Commission, ECB, member states, but not me. That's the only reason why I'm saying this. Not me. We're pushing to, in the general framework of the adjustment programs, which were without any other option, to impose huge sacrifices on the poorer part of the Greek society. I was fighting, just an example, against the reduction of the minimum wage in Greece. And I was very surprised when I said it at the Eurogroup. I can speak about Eurogroup now in a different way than I used to do it when we last met. I was very surprised that Portugal, Spain, Malta, Cyprus, Slovenia, Slovakia had minimum wages being inferior to the minimum, to the even reduced minimum wages of Greece. So I wanted to defend what I did consider at that time being the weakest part of the Greek workforce against this request of Troika members, and I was surprised that I didn't have the support of each and every one of the Eurogroup, because they were telling me our minimum wage, our family allowances, they are lower than they are in Greece. I responded to that argument that the price development in Greece is different from the price developments they have, but it didn't help.
I remember last time we spoke, one thing that really impressed me is that you told me that you thought part of the program was designed for punishing purposes.
You have to remember, and you know it, that there was great anger about Greek behavior forms in the past. It was not the European Union or the Euro area or someone outside of the country who created the problems in this country. I'm referring to the real domestic problems this country was facing and is still facing, although having improved in extraordinary way its performances. But yeah, maybe that some Protestants of the North have a tendency to punish instead of having, as we Catholics and Orthodox do normally behave, a tendency to reward the one who is recognizing his sins.
Now, there's a theory in Greece that, because Europe was not ready, a Greek government back in 2010 could basically blackmail Europe, saying, we're going to default on our debt because it's too much, you're not ready, so let's strike a deal. Was that possible back then?
No. I don't even remember if any kind of temptation in that direction was planned or would have been undertaken. The problem was back in 2010 and 2011 and 2012 that this obscene word of Grexit suddenly dominated all the headlines of the international financial press. I was in Greece in 2011, and I was in Greece in August last year, and I'm discovering without surprise a totally different atmosphere. When I was here in August last year, that's less than 1 year, everyone was considering that Greece could have to exit the Euro area. Some member states of the Euro area wouldn't have been against this perspective realizing. And I was always considering, Greece being Greece, and the Greeks being Greeks, that this is no option. In no way did I ever consider that this could be an option. It would have been in the worstest interest of this great nation and of this sometimes weak Greek state. It wouldn't have been in the interest, in the larger interest of the Euro area as a whole, or as the European Union as a whole. So everything I did was to convince others to step away from this criminal undertaking, which would have consisted in throwing Greece away like a piece of paper, like nothing. Greece is not nothing. Greece is, to my heart, I can't say more than everything, but a major part of everything, of what is important in Europe.
Did you get scared at some point that we were very close to that happening?
Yes.
When was that?
I don't remember when it was, but I remember that whenever this danger occurred, suddenly, because domestic policies of others were pointing into that direction, or because the market reactions were indicating that this could be a way out, I was always strongly reacting against that, not only in the meetings. The meetings are important, yes, but the meetings before the meetings are important. The phone calls before the meetings are important. And I made it very clear that if anyone would try, and it was tried, to bring Greece to the last exit before, to the last door before the exit, then I would resign as chair of the Euro area. It didn't help. I think because the negative effort was made by others, but I'm leaving my natural modesty, which is not so natural. Yeah, I did it, and I did avoid Greece having an uncertain future, and I'm applauding the efforts by the Greek society, mainly by the poorest part of this country, for the enormous efforts which were undertaken in this country. These efforts were needed. Consolidation is without any other option. Structural reforms are as needed as is needed the budgetary consolidation. First results are there, promising results are there. I'm sad that the consequences, if the first signs of promising results didn't reach the individual Greeks and the individual Greek homes, because after having proven such an enormous and impressive amount of courage, we have to support Greece in its hope that things are improving and becoming better and better. This is a country which is proving that it takes seriously into account its European responsibilities, and I do hope that the other Europeans will continue to prove that solidarity is a European virtue, and I do think that we have to stop this dividing line between the so-called virtuous North and the so-called unvirtuous South. Do you know that next year, or the year after next year, Greece will have a smaller deficit than some of the virtuous countries of the North? Who would have believed that 2 years ago? Nobody.
Now, after the German election, everybody expects a big clash between the IMF and Germany about another debt restructuring. Christine Lagarde is very clear that she's going to push very hard for an official debt reduction. How do you see that playing out?
I do think, and now I'm speaking like a former president of the Eurogroup, I don't think that it's wise for Greece and for the euro area to discuss this matter right now. Debt relief, haircut, however you call it, is not on the table. We'll discuss this problem when it's tabled. If we were to discuss this problem, haircut, debt relief, fiscal gap in 15 and 16 right now, we could, without having the intention to do that, harm the newly rediscovered credibility of Greece. What is important for this country? People have to know that. Is the return of international credibility. Nobody today is doubting that Greece will succeed. If we are discussing now, without having hard data in between our hands, these issues, that relief, fiscal gap, haircut, we would invite financial markets to take a new interest in what they would consider as being a Greek weakness.
But, the problem is that still the Greek debt is very high compared to the GDP.
Yes, but we have downside risk in Greece. We have also upside risk if upside movements can be considered as being risk. So Greece will have a primary surplus in 2013. I do think that Greece will renew with its growth tradition in 2014 after the 6 years of awful recession. So let's wait. Let's wait. Hard data.
Greek exit from the euro, you think it's not a possibility anymore?
No.
It's done with?
It's done with, and this is due to two factors. The energy of the Greek people, including the Greek government, which is delivering an excellent job, although parts of the policy implemented is not really followed enthusiastically, and I do understand that, by the Greek public. The fact that Brexit is no longer a subject or an issue is that Greece has done what Greece has been asked to do and what was negotiated with Greece, and it's also due to the fact that the leaders, the political leaders, I mean, of the euro area, again and again were stating that everything will be done in order to avoid the breakdown of the euro area. And to the fact that back in November 2012, under my chairmanship, we said that if Greece is implementing the program, if Greece is realizing a primary budgetary surplus, then we'll provide all the means which will be necessary in order to support Greece in the future. And I will be always amongst those who will support whatever happens, Greece for the future.
Do you think your disagreement with Germany over this had something to do with you leaving the Eurogroup?
Maybe, but if this was the price to be paid, that's okay for me.